Welcome. My name is Cassie. Let me take this off so you can maybe hear me better. My name is Cassie. My pronouns are she and her. I have short dark hair pulled back into a ponytail with a light green shirt on. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness, no matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming. We greet you today with love. I'd like to extend a special welcome to everyone who is watching us on YouTube. This morning, during the prelude, please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you're joining us from. If you are in OKC, what neighborhood are you in? Or if you're elsewhere, what city are you in? And now the prelude prepares us for worship.
We light our chalice here in our building in Midtown, Oklahoma City, on land that was home to indigenous peoples, including the Apache, Caddo, and Wichita, on land which was taken from the Muskogee and Seminole and other removed and relocated peoples. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
And welcome again to those members of our wider community who are joining us online. Y para nuestros amigos que hablan español, buenos días. I am Reverend Diana Davies, and my pronouns are she, her. And for those who are blind, have a visual impairment, or are watching us online with limited bandwidth, I am a white woman with gray hair and glasses. Today, we'll explore a word and a concept that can be a little tricky for Unitarian Universalists, as well as for many who come to us wounded or even traumatized from their previous encounters with organized religion. That vexing word is faith. Can faith and realism coexist? Can a person who trusts in the scientific method have faith? How can Unitarian Universalists all have different faiths, all different beliefs, and yet share the same faith? Today, we'll hear how different Unitarian Universalist theologians and religious leaders have responded to the question, what is faith anyway? Our opening reading comes from Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. Quote, "This is a congregation that gathers in faith, not in faith in one religion or one God or any one way. We gather in faith in the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and in those around us, not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another. Rather, a faith that in our shared imperfection, we may learn to stumble and fall together. Faith that we will help one another to rise and try again and again. We are Unitarian Universalist. Unquote. You know, one of the greatest unmitigated joys of congregational life is when we welcome a new member into our community. And we have a couple of people, I'm not going to ask them to rise, but maybe lift up your hands, who are planning to sign our membership book after our service today. Emily, would you just raise up your hand? And Juliet Nazario, tu mano. And we will formally welcome them and all of our new members later on, a little later on in the year, but I just want to share that joy with you today. At the same time, one of the most challenging moments in congregational life is when we need to say goodbye. And today we say goodbye to someone who joined our community within the last couple of years, but who made a major positive impact in a short period of time. Carol Storr has modeled what it means to be an active member. She has served on both the Radical Welcoming team and the HR working group. She's volunteered as an usher and greeter and in a variety of other roles. And she's done all of this with a lovely humility, sincerity, and sense of humor. Carol will be moving back to Texas to be closer to family and long-term friends, and I know I speak for many in our congregation when I say congratulations and best wishes for this next phase of your life. And we wish you all the best, but we will miss you very much. Our opening hymn will be sung by Lana Henson this morning. Morning Has Broken.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's our play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new
James Luther Adams is recognized as one of the most important Unitarian Universalist theologians of the 20th century. As a Unitarian minister, he served 2 churches in Massachusetts where he became involved in labor strikes and local textile mills. And through that experience, he came to understand that instead of focusing on individualism, a liberal faith must first and foremost be a voice for the oppressed. He was a staunch advocate for liberal religion, but he also maintained an attitude of self-critique. He once wrote, quote, "An unexamined faith is not worth having." Here is what James Luther Adams had to say about the question of faith.
The non-religious are not themselves without faith. The non-religious are not themselves without faith. There are many kinds of faith that may be dispensed with, but there remains one kind which no one can live without. We do not need to use the word faith to refer to it. The word confidence will serve just as well. No one and no culture can long maintain a dynamic and creative attitude toward life without the confidence that human life has some important meaning, either actual or potential, and that this meaning may in some tolerable fashion be maintained or achieved. In other words, that resources are available for the fulfillment of this meaning. James Luther Adams, From the Love of God, 1953.
The faith of the liberal must express itself in societal forms, in the forms of education, in economic and social organization, in political organization. The faith of a church or of a nation is an adequate faith only when it inspires and enables people to give of their time and energy to shape the various institutions, societal, economic, and political, of the common life. A faith in the commanding, sustaining, transforming reality is one that tries to shape history. Any other faith is thoroughly undependable. It is also, in the end, impotent. It is not a faith that molds history. It is a faith that enables history to crush humanity. James Luther Adams, Guiding Principles for a Free Faith, 1976.
Morning. Every Sunday we take an offering. Since 2002, all cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of August, our Change for Change partner is Positive Tomorrows. Positive Tomorrows partners with families experiencing homelessness to help educate their children to create pathways to learning and success. Positive Tomorrows provides food, shelter, health care, dental care, and education. Change for Change funds will be used to purchase iPads for children in the program to assist them in learning and to read at more advanced levels. For those of you who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment, we'll be passing the offering plates. If you're not able to make a gift today, we invite you to write a note of encouragement to our Change for Change partner, and we'll share them with them. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian. Just write Change for Change in the memo line, or make an online payment through our church website, oneuc.org.
Anthony Pinn is one of the most influential African-American humanists teaching and writing today. He's executive director of the Society for the Study of Black Religion, and he served on the board of trustees for Meadville Lombard Theological School and on the UU panel of theological education, and he's a current member of the board for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. For Pinn, faith is a negative word associated with reliance on supernatural forces. He points out that Christian scripture defines faith as substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And yet, in his writing, Pinn describes what we might think of as a kind of humanist faith. Faith, in this case, is a committed persistence against all odds, against all likelihood of success. Pinn draws a parallel between humanist and the mythological character of Sisyphus, who is doomed to push a huge boulder up a hill only to watch it roll back down every day for eternity, as described by the French philosopher Albert Camus in his book, The Myth of Sisyphus.
Somewhere between absurdity and happiness is humanism. It is a life stance, a philosophy of life, or for some, a religious orientation. It urges ethics and moral codes that value the web of life, of which humanity is a small part, and assumes we work to improve the arrangements of collective and individual life without any sort of transcendent assistance. Camus encourages us to project Sisyphus as not broken by this process of pushing a rock for eternity, but instead we should see him as content with the process of struggle, the ability to do something regardless of what that doing achieves. Struggle to make a difference in the world, for the humanist, has no guaranteed outcomes, but instead, humanists gain some sense of living through the mere fact that they can struggle, can do something, despite what that doing may or may not achieve. That's from Humanism in 2015.
Would you join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation? You know, as human beings, so much of our mind energy is related to grieving, wishing, or complaining. And I'd like to take some time this morning to just sit in a state of gratitude. After so many days of unbearable heat, today we have coolness and clouds, and even finally some rain. So let's take a moment to acknowledge this, to offer gratitude for this day. I invite you to take a comfortable seat, your feet firmly planted on the ground, your eyes closed or softly focused. You might want to work out the kinks in your neck by dropping your head from side to side. You might want to release some of the tension in your shoulders by bringing them up to your ears and then just letting them drop. And then I invite you to take a deep, cleansing breath, bringing the breath deep down into the deepest parts of your lungs, holding it for as long as is comfortable, and then exhaling slowly and fully, making the exhale a little longer than the inhale. And we can try to do that again. And now let's bring our attention down to the earth, down to the ground, the soil, cracked and dry, covered with crispy brown grass, pulled away from the edges wherever it touches concrete. And let's imagine the soil opening up to the rain, drinking it in, expanding like the lungs of the earth, filling up with life itself. In your mind's eye, you might want to see the roots of the trees and all the other plants soaking in the water, pulling it up and pushing it out in the same way that your lungs fill with air and push oxygen out into your body. You can imagine the earth drinking, breathing, cooling. Even as we drink in the air, feel the coolness of the air entering our nostrils. And just for a moment, we can be still and know that this is enough. This breath is enough. Life is enough. You are enough. And for this, we might let go with a deep sigh of gratitude. We breathe, the earth breathes, all of creation breathes. And it is already complete. It is already perfect. And for this, we say thank you. With each breath, thank you. Maintaining this meditative state, will you join me in humming hymn number 391 in your gray hymnal? And you may want to open up your hymnal just to look at the words, even if we don't sing them out loud. It's voice still and small. And Diane's going to play. I'm going to take it down a notch because I can. Reverend Jackie Clement is a Latina UU minister who co-wrote Faith Like a River, Themes from UU History. It's a curriculum that's frequently used in our religious education programs.
Faith is a deeply seated confidence, vital to our very existence. Belief is only what we think is true, though we wouldn't stake our lives on it. Faith leaves room for mystery. Belief does not. As Albert Einstein wrote in his personal credo, The most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mysterious. Sometimes what seems most solid and stable is only an illusion of stability. Things that appear more ethereal, that may seem to be the toughest to grasp, are in fact the most stable and secure. Love, faith, and community may seem to be intangible beliefs or intangible ideals, but if nurtured, they can serve as the very bedrock of our lives. Beliefs can fall away, but the things that seem most insubstantial, perhaps because they can be the hardest to come by, have the greatest worth and provide the steadiest base. From Reverend Jackie Clement, Faith and Belief, 2012.
Here's a story about faith. This story takes place back in the days when a lot of nuns still wore habits. So there was a nun who worked for a local home health care agency, and she was out making her rounds when she ran out of gas. And as luck would have it, there was a gas station just 1 block away. So she walked to the station to get a can of gas so that she could start the car and then drive to the station to fill up. And sadly, once she got there, the attendant told her, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're all out of gas cans." Well, this nun was on her way to see a patient, and she couldn't really wait around. So she trudged back to the car, rummaged around in her trunk, looking for some kind of container. And all she could find was a bedpan that she was taking to that patient. Well, being quite resourceful, she carried the bedpan to the station, filled it with gasoline, and then carried it back to the car. And as she was pouring the gas into the tank of her car, 2 people drove by. And the driver turned to the passenger and said, "Now that's faith." Here's another story about faith. This one is true. The protagonist of this story is a 19th century New York State farmer named William Miller. Miller spent countless hours reading the Bible, and through all of this study, he came to believe that the scripture contained coded references to a specific date when Christ would return to earth and the world would effectively end. He traveled all around New England and New York State, sharing his theory and his timeline of the second coming. Over time, he attracted a large group of followers who came to be known as Millerites. In 1843, Miller told his followers that Christ would return the following year, in 1844. And with this information, some Millerites sold all their property or simply abandoned their farms. Women cut off their hair and gave away all their jewelry. March 21st would be the day, Miller declared. But the 21st came and went. And still, most of Miller's followers maintained their faith. A small error in calculation, Miller explained. The correct date is April 18th. Well, that day also passed without incident. Finally, in August of 1844, he announced the true date of the second coming would for sure be October 22nd. And so on the appointed day, Miller's followers put on white ascension robes. They climbed to the tops of hills or trees or went up to the roofs of their houses so that they could be more easily lifted up to heaven. But as the sun rose on the morning of October 23rd, it became clear Miller had been wrong. His followers had put their faith in a misguided belief. And the entire fiasco came to be known in history as the Great Disappointment. And finally, here's one more story about faith, and this one is autobiographical. Growing up in the Lutheran faith and the Lutheran Church, I found beauty in meaning and Martin Luther's insistence that salvation is not accomplished through good works, but by faith alone. As a young person, I found great relief in the idea that I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to do great things. I just had to have faith. That was all that was needed to save what I thought of then as my otherwise irredeemable, sinful soul. But as my best Sunday school teachers and youth leaders would remind me, it's not that faith makes good works unimportant. It's just that once you have faith, you will want to do good. Faith leads to goodness, I was told, not the other way around. And that made sense, at least in theory, even if I didn't always see it working in practice among the so-called faithful. But what troubled me, even as a kid, was Luther's juxtaposition of faith and reason. It was Luther, after all, who said, quote, "Reason is the greatest enemy that faith has. It never comes to the aid of spiritual things, but more frequently than not struggles against the divine word, treating with contempt all that emanates from God." And Luther also wrote, quote, "Faith must trample underfoot all reason, sense, and understanding. And whatever it sees must be put out of sight and know nothing but the word of God," unquote. Now, Martin Luther was a very educated and learned man, and I don't honestly believe that he ever meant to say that faith demands ignorance. But sadly, many self-proclaimed Christians today seem to support this idea. The idea that the pursuit of understanding, the scientific method, and the search for a multivalent, complicated, ever-evolving truth, that they're all antithetical to faith. And it was this insistence on the mystery of faith over and against scientific evidence, documented fact, and lived experience that ultimately led me to a crisis of faith. It was all the times in my catechism class and in Sunday school when I said, "Why?" And I received the answer, "Don't ask, just have faith." That's what made me realize that faith was something I couldn't have. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that that mystery of faith, that is unquestioned faith, magical thinking faith, we can say lazy faith, that is just a prop and a tool for maintaining the status quo. There's a direct line between those who demand just have faith and the current attacks on science and history in our schools, the denial of climate change, and the insistence on gender binaries despite scientific evidence and the lived experience of countless individuals. I actually agree with Martin Luther that faith can lead to goodness and good actions, but a certain kind of faith can lead to fascism. So, what does this all mean? Does it mean that only those who are antagonistic to science, who support the passing of laws that prevent students from learning the uncomfortable truths of systemic racism and patriarchy, who refuse to acknowledge facts that go against their cherished beliefs, are they the only ones who can lay claim to the title people of faith? I know that the media and popular opinion and political rhetoric seem to uphold that idea, but I don't believe it for a second. I refuse to allow the enemies of learning and progressive change to claim sole ownership of the banner of faith. That is why every time I write an angry letter to our governor, and they're always angry, let's face it, I begin with the phrase, as a faith leader and as a person of faith. And I mean it. I believe it's not really a matter of faith versus no faith. It's a matter of choosing what to have faith in. Or rather, it's a matter of reframing faith, redefining it, making it not passive, not something that comes to you, not something that you have, but thinking of it instead as something that you do. Martin Luther believed that you can't act your way to goodness. Only faith can do that, even if faith eventually leads to good action. But all the Unitarian Universalist voices we've heard this morning suggest another way of thinking about it. They suggest that good action for its own sake, not to win personal salvation or glory for ourselves, that is in itself a kind of faith. It is faith in action. When we stretch beyond our comfort zones for the sake of achieving greater understanding, that is faith in action. When we center the voices of the marginalized, even if it means stepping outside of the spotlight or the center stage ourselves, that is faith in action. When we act on behalf of others who are not our friends or family, others who may be very different from us, or may not even be alive yet, who will never know our names, that is faith in action. When we do what is right, not because it will lead to any immediate, tangible victory, but because it may, in some unknowable future, establish a foundation upon which someone else may achieve victory. That is faith in action. Humanist Unitarian Universalist theologian Dr. Sharon Welch has written that, quote, "We do not think ourselves into new ways of being. Rather, we act ourselves into new ways of thinking and being," unquote. Faith for Unitarian Universalists, as with a number of other religious traditions, works the same way. We don't act out of faith. We act into faith. We don't need to have faith before we can practice kindness and work for justice. We make faith through that practice and through that work. What if, as religious educator Kenneth Stokes and others have suggested, faith isn't a noun at all, but a verb? This approach to faith isn't unique to Unitarian Universalists. It connects us to a great network of religious traditions, traditions that are based more in practice than in belief. As mythologist Richard Stromer has pointed out, in Pali, the language of the most ancient Buddhist text, faith is grammatically a verb, an action, as it also is in classical Latin and Hebrew. Faith as a verb is both an ancient idea and an incredibly fresh, liberating idea. Specifically, faith is a transitive verb. And now I'm getting my previous language teacher on here. That is to say that faith in action isn't self-contained. It always happens in relation to someone or something else. When we act in faith, we are having an impact on the world. In the words of James Luther Adams, a faith that is sustaining and transforming is one that tries to shape history. We here in this congregation, we aren't bound together because we have a shared faith. We are bound together by the shared activity of making, shaping, and living faith. To keep asking why, even when we are punished for asking. To keep learning, even when the lessons are personally painful. To keep fighting for the marginalized, even when it means relinquishing our place in the center. To keep working for a prize that we will never see with our own eyes. To struggle with no guaranteed outcome. Now that is faith.
We extinguish the chalice flame, but not the light of love and community, which continues to burn in our hearts.
After our service today, all are invited to Daniel Hall for fellowship and informal conversation. And one thing I forgot to note at the beginning of our service is that starting next week, we will be joined by our new choir director, Chukwebuka Ezekacha, and we will have choir rehearsals beginning again starting this Wednesday at 7 p.m. So if you are somebody who was in the choir before, or you've always kind of thought about choir but never really took the plunge, this is your chance. Please join us here in the sanctuary, 7 o'clock, choir rehearsal, following bell choir, which will continue to rehearse at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays. For now, I leave you with this blessing. I don't want to tell you to have faith. Instead, I wish for you the strength, the courage, and the commitment to make faith, to live faith, and the things that you do for the world and for each other, and you're striving for the good. Even when there is no foreseeable victory, no immediate reward, may you strive. May you find happiness and meaning in the struggle. And most importantly, in all you do, love. love, love. May it be so. And now, please rise in body or in spirit as we sing together, closing hymn. It's number 18 in the gray hymnal, What Wondrous Love. And Lana will lead us.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul? What wondrous love is this, oh my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my